You're too many warts on your head there, Bill. Just get critical. I'm just getting in the mood for this one.
That's big trouble, man.
Big trouble.
I know what stories are going to come out before it gets started, Bob.
I don't want to go toe to toe with you. I'll start because it's why is it positioned where it is? It's at the very bottom of the profile. There's 3 at the bottom, critical's right at the bottom. And it's the most inverse to just about everything in the top half, especially in the relating side, but even on the achieving side. So in the bottom half, the lower you go into the bottom half, the lower the correlations get to things in the top half or to effectiveness and so on. So it's right here because it's when it has you, when it's running you, it can be very punishing to people around you. And so it's there for a reason. I don't know that I've said this on this series, but at one point I did a little process when I was running the statistics back years ago on this, and I said, well, there's a statistical process in the software that allows the software to draw where it sees these dimensions. In a 2D drawing. You can have it do it in 3D too and 4D, but you can't print it in 4D. And so on. But I said, print this, show me where these dimensions land in a 2D. And it drew a perfect circle. Dots were for each dimension, and they were laid out in a perfect circle. All the creative ones were on top, all the reactive ones were on the bottom, and in the same order. In the bottom half, in the exact same order, including, like we just talked about, perfectionism being close to the line because they had that curve up just the way it's laid out in the profile. So the correlations and the differences that are measured in statistical software mapped it out exactly the way we lay it out.
I take critical with me every day. So critical is a part of what resides within me. And it's managed in a way that has taken many, many, many years because it had me. When I go above critical up into identity, inside the profile, I identified my ability to see quickly what didn't work, what was wrong, what needed to be changed, what wasn't good enough. You combine that with the perfection that we talked about, and you take next to critical my arrogance. What a combination. I mean, what a combination. One that was more difficult for me in relationship than almost anything else. And it was a dampening effect on all of my leadership and every one of my relationships. My closest, most intimate, deepest relationships had with them a major element of being critical, which I actually wired early on as the best way I could be of high value, the best way that I could provide my value. I delivered that critical in direct, not courageous, authentic feedback. I did it in a way that was personal, and critical comes with a big edge. And the edge that it has in it is it's about you. It's personal. And that's very difficult to come back from. Bob knows this. My father used to say, leveling with me or leveling me. Are you leveling me or leveling with me? I leveled. And it doesn't work in that way. It delivers the message. It delivers what you have. but it doesn't get the result that you're looking for. It's the opposite of the result you're looking for. And it's about me. It's not about them, but it gets pointed to them. So it was a big learning for me. And I see it everywhere I go in very senior leaders have learned to make a living off of high critical. And it stops them in their tracks at a certain point when that reactive structure, and that's hung on that reactive structure because there's huge gift in critical. When it's hung on that reactive structure to the point that it gets that big, it's the first thing that everybody leads with. The entire organization that individual is responsible for, or a group of leaders, has that critical element to it, and people never feel like they're okay. They always wonder when it's going to drop, when the shoe's going to drop, what that looks for. It keeps people off of balance, out of line, and it's not growth generative and developmentally generative. It actually is the opposite. It doesn't mean we can't learn from it. Doesn't mean there's not the opportunity in there, but it's not how it's received, because it makes someone think that they're not okay, they're not good enough, and there's something wrong with them. Oh, it's a rough one when it's hung in that way.
I love your leveling with or leveling someone. If you look at it in the profile, it's directly across from courage and integrity, which is its gift. It's willing to tell the truth. It's willing. It is courageous in that way. Except if you look at where courage is up top dead center, it's the balance between the yin and the yang, between heart and power. So it's, how do I step into my power, tell the truth with heart? Courage is open heart. Critical is in protecting. It's rational. It's brilliant. It's analytical. It can cut right through it. But if it's blocked or closed heart, I'm not in connection with you, and then I'm cutting right through you too. And that's where the damage gets done. And if you're on a team and you watch that happen to someone else, for example, well, all of a sudden, I don't want to be on the receiving end of that. Ever. And I don't trust. Even though I might have a really warm and positive relationship, it sets up a whole minefield of, if I challenge this, I'm going to be on the receiving end of that. And if I've got anything in me that says I'm okay if you think highly of me, or like me, or agree with my ideas, or anything like that that's still in my reactive, then it's like, I don't want to take you on. No way am I going to say what I really think in this room.
Yeah, the critical element, critical reactive tendency operates in a significant way with a lot of high number of some of our most senior leaders in organizations and in businesses. And when it starts working against them is at that point when they lead with critical, because that's the way they look at everything. It has a tendency to be delivered in a sharp way that is often not direct but blunt. And it doesn't ever consider what Bob was talking about previously, which is big heart, open heart. So it's not delivered with, I am interested in your best interest. It's delivered with you don't do it right. You've done it wrong. You need to think about it this way. It needs to be done like that. And often it has a tendency to go at, as I talked about a minute ago, you personally. So it's not about being able to look at the individual and separate from who they are in what it is that's showing up. It combines those. And so it goes right at the heart of someone's self-identity. It goes right at the heart of how they have reputation with self. and moving away from that into being able to be courageously authentic, where people know where they stand with you, they know how they're doing, they know that you care about their best interests, they know that you have their best interests at heart, all of those things. It's literally switching it up into the creative from where it operates in the reactive, because it is absolutely necessary for the way we work together. It just can't be delivered on that reactive structure. I mean, think about the relationship you have, that you know the individual is looking at you with a critical eye and finding everything that you could do better or you're doing wrong, and never being able to see the other things. For me, that was the lens I looked through. And I went into organizations in the early part of my career in helping with the turnarounds that we're on. And we had to do those things like that. And those guys were fast at it to look at a balance sheet, know what was on the P&L, what was there, what was going to be changed, what was going to be cut. And I was responsible for delivering some of those messages. And it was like, wow. I thought that's what I was getting paid for. There's a cost to high critical on others, often not on the self in the same way. So the cost goes out. The cost doesn't always come back in for the high critic.
They had a refinery, local refinery, asked me to come in and solve a problem between the head of research development engineering and the head of operations. Well, if you go into a refinery, that's pretty much the whole organization. Now, the president of the refinery was a high complier, so he couldn't handle the conflict between these two. And these two hated each other. They literally couldn't be in the same room with each other. When I met with the head of operations, he sat me down and just said, "Look, let me tell you what I want to get out of this coaching session. Blah 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 blah. Just like, let me tell you what I want." But then he said, "I'm a turnaround guy. That's what I do for a living." And when I did do the interviews, I went around and he had been largely responsible for turning that plant around. It went from, we're trying to sell it, it's on the auction block, nobody will buy it, to we wouldn't think of selling this, in a few short years of this guy's leadership. But I also heard that he was killing people. And they talked about good Joe, bad Joe. And he came to me, he said to me, "What I want to know from you is whether my leadership style can take this plant to the next level. Because I've been a turnaround guy all my life, but I now have young kids. And I don't want to keep moving around the country. I want to stay here and lead this organization. I want to know from you if my leadership is ready for that." And when he got his results, it was really low on relating and really high on critical and some other things related to it, arrogance and control and so on, and really low on integrity. And he couldn't, like, "What do you mean low on integrity?" Well, when you get low on integrity, you're not walking your talk. He also had really high scores on relating, on self scores, and he believed in empowerment, involvement, creating an inspiring place to work, but he wasn't walking his talk. He was harshly critical of everyone. And so he was getting scores by others as low on integrity. Well, it really got his attention, and he came to the conclusion that his leadership style was not ready to take the plant to the next level. And to his credit, he did the work. And so did the other person, who had a very high critical, but a complier. So he was a controller. The other person was a complier, but both shared a high critical. And they were killing each other. They hated each other. And by the end, they were able to be in the same room with each other and work creatively together. But they had to do a lot of work to get there. So
High complier, high controller, they both had in common high critical. So you're coming at it from heart and will, right in the middle of that protector at critical, and you can see it even on the different angles. And wow, is that ever a confluence? And for you to operate there and work your way through it in a relationship would be just huge. Having to be willing to and humble enough and open and willing to be aware enough to do that work. And so that very story that Bob told gives us a better understanding of what it means for me individually to come together in relationship with someone else where we're both going to have to do our work and what it requires of us and what that looks like. I would guess that out of all of the experiences that I've had around this, my favorite one is, and Bob will know this one really well, and people that have been through certification with me understand it. We were doing all of the debriefs for the engineers in Honda across North America and also globally, and up north of the US and Canada, we had a high controller, high protector with a real high critical. And the story he told was that his nickname was Blade Down. His nickname was Blade Down. And when you think of Blade Down in the North Country in Canada, you've got the snowplow. And when a snowplow goes down on the road, what happens in front of the plow? Everything just goes out. As the plow goes down the road, you move along. That's the way he went into a new plant. He went into a new plant and he said, the minute I walked in the door, what went through my head before I ever walked into the plant floor was Blade Down. And I delivered it as I saw it. And the high critical was his view of his greatest gift because he could see what didn't work and what needed to change, and he needed to do it now. And that didn't make for any of the relational side in the way he viewed it. Everything was just going out on both sides as the plow went down, Blade Down. And he literally, in the same example that Bob used with the refinery, it was not sustainable leadership. He'd go in and turn around and then leave, because the results that he could get in the turnaround would not be sustained over time. That leadership will not hold and last. So to actually cap the results and get diminishing results when you lead with that, with high credit. Fascinating.
Robert Kaplan, one of the lead researchers years ago at the Center for Creative Leadership, wrote a book called Beyond Ambition, which is about high critical and high controlling leadership. And he coined a term in there called destructive productivity, that you're driving results in this way and you're getting them, but you're either promoted or leave just before it comes off the rails. So you're doing it in a way that exhausts the emotional and even financial, physical resources of the organization, and you're headed for a fall. And that became the source of the dimension sustainable productivity for on the top half of the dimension in systems awareness. So when I'm leading from high critical, if it's really strong, it becomes what Bill's talking about, destructive productivity. I can get results, I can turn a plan around, but it's not sustainable. Somebody else is going to have to come in.
Goes right directly to sustainable productivity, doesn't it, Bob?
Yep.
It's not going to stay there. Diminish and return, and it's only a matter of time.
I got called in to do some work at the local nuclear power plant here, Davis-Besse, and the VP was really, really, really high critical. Really high critical. And he built a team around him that had to follow suit. So they were a rough group. And they wanted to become more effective at teamwork and so on. Well, I did a round of interviews and nobody would tell me the truth. Everything was fine. So I did another round. Everything was fine. Did another round. Everything was fine. Finally, I said to the head of operations there, not the VP, I said, what's going on? I can't get anything from anybody. He closed the door and said, let me tell you what's going on here. Let me tell you what's really going on here. Then I got the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up writing a report to this VP saying, your leadership style is destructively productive. It's destructive productivity. And this plan is going to come off the rails if you don't change, because you're headed you're headed. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's not sustainable. And I also said to him, it's not safe to say what you think in this plant, which in a nuclear plant violates nuclear safety laws. And if that would get to the NRC, they'll come in and shut you down. I didn't know that then. I just put out what I knew to be true, was it's not safe to say what you think in this organization. And they were setting records. They were setting production records. Longest run time, high quality, and they're getting award industry recognition for these records. And 2 weeks after I got there, they had their planned outage, shut the plant down to do lots of repairs all at once. This is common. This is how the nuclear plants operate. And they had the first and the biggest nuclear event since 3 Mile Island in the United States. They were pulling the spent fuel out of the reactor, and one of the rods that you go in to pull it out fell over. They had eroded the nuclear reactor to such a point that it was about ready to blow. Only 1/8 of an inch of steel stood between that and a blowout. And when we really got into it, the data was obvious. It was obvious that they had a problem in containment. And I told this leader when I wrote my report that you're career limited in this field. Well, when that happened, the NRC came in. He was gone. He was no longer welcome in the industry. That whole management team was fired. People went to jail over this because they lied to the NRC because this guy made them lie. So he was really harsh and driven to set records, and it put them on a path of very destructive productivity. It's the most extreme example I've ever seen. And he was sharp, he was bright, he was all of that, but boy, was he punishing. And it set up a culture in an organization that actually drove it right off the rails.
Well, and you think about this, remember a few moments ago, we're talking about high cost on other, not on self. So what that means is that in that high critic, when it's working, we'll also talk about the gifts for a little bit here, because the gifts of the critic are really strong. Just hung on a reactive structure, the gifts never get to actually manifest or appear. But the high cost on others means that the critic is protected. It sits in protection in a way that they're able to keep a distance or a barrier between them and also being human like the rest of us. So you don't get feedback as a high critic. You don't get the truth. It's not safe to tell you the truth. Because if I tell you the truth as a high critic, you're going to come back that fast and I'm going to be leveled. In fact, incident in one of the hospital systems we're working with here, where the surgeon was removing the working on the wrong organ, wrong knee. Both, this surgeon, right? Wrong organ, one surgeon, wrong knee, the other surgeon, orthopedic. And they wouldn't say anything in the operating room. They let him do the surgery. Come on, are you kidding me? Nobody's going to step up and say that's actually not what you're supposed to be operating on today for fear of. So you look at that and you say, well, where are the downsides? What does that look like? What does it mean? The opposite is also true. Give me someone that has a critical eye that can see things that nobody else sees and knows what to do with that and can do it quickly and be able to put that on a creative structure. They are of huge value. The high critic can go into any setting and see what's off, see what's not working, see what is working. If they learn how to take that same muscle they use to be critical to look at what is working, they can turn that into a 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 ratio. In most situations, there's a lot more going right than there is going wrong. It's a combination of those. It takes the same thing to see what's right as it does to see what's wrong. and you learn how to actually make that work for you. And then when you find what isn't working, what could be changed, what is the problem, what's there, you can deliver it on a creative structure, and it becomes that courageous authenticity where everyone's like, oh, wow, we get better. And man, do you ever see that? Do you ever see that in real high athletic team performance? Criticism is never delivered as personal. It's delivered of next play, we can do it better. And that includes me and you. So it makes us more human together as opposed to the opposite. It makes being human okay. It makes all of those things and our learning as a good thing. And all the fact that you can see it and help me get better as opposed to delivering, you're wrong and you're doing it wrong. You're wrong. Big difference between, oh, you know what? I got something here. I think I saw that I could really be helpful. Would you be interested or willing to talk about it a little bit? You got to have jurisdiction to be able to use high critical in a way that it doesn't turn into the criticism.
Yeah.
What else will you see as the gifts of the high critic, Bob?
Well,
High critical.
You've described them. This is in the protecting, and the gift in protecting is brilliant mind. So when you see high scores in protecting, I was coaching one guy at really high arrogance scores, which is right next to critical, and of course it bleeds over into critical.
And Bob and I know nothing about it.
Yeah, right. Bill scored me off the charts on arrogance, but we'll talk about that when we get to arrogance. He also said when I confronted him on it, I said, Bill, how come nobody's ever told me about this? And I trust this team, and the team hadn't told me about this. It came out on the profile. He says, well, you don't know what it's like to have to challenge you. You don't know the price you pay. So that's my high critical. So when you see high critical, you're likely to see rational brilliance. So I was talking with this guy, and he seemed like a really nice guy to me, and he was a very senior healthcare executive and had a really high arrogance score, and I wasn't experiencing him that way. And then all of a sudden, he was telling me about his son, and he said, "Yeah, my son's a genius, and he's a da 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 da." And I stopped him. I said, "Wait a minute. I bet the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What's your IQ, if you don't mind my asking?" And he just smiled and kind of put his head down and gave me a really high number. And I said, "Oh, so you're not arrogant. You just see things faster than others."
Mm.
And then, so what do you do when you can see it way ahead of the rest of the team? And we got into a discussion about how he deploys himself in that moment, and it's very arrogant and very critical, So you'll often see here a kind of really intellectual brilliance, and that's its gift. When Bill says hung on a reactive structure, it's that I'm identified with that gift. I am the one who can find the flaw in the ointment. I am the one that can go into any situation and diagnose it.
It's my greatest gift.
And it makes me me.
Makes me me. It's who I am.
I don't know who I am.
If I don't have that, I'm not.
And then it becomes, I have to deliver this gift every time. And if it's still in reactive, it's closed, protected heart, because the core fear in protecting is vulnerability, this kind of openness. It doesn't mean you don't have big heart. You do, but it's been hurt and it's now protected. So I engage from here. And when I engage from here and I feel at risk because these ideas define me, or my ability to convince you that I'm right here defines me, then it gets really harsh, especially if you disagree with me. And so a real gift.
Especially if you disagree with me.
Yeah.
Especially if you disagree with me. And I was flashing as Bob was talking about it. Being a parent of 4, I can tell you that my parental skill and talent was not because of my high critical. It was not something that my kids used to say, I really hope he comes home early today. Maybe you can be critical of me in another way. And we'll leave those stories alone at that point. But I'll tell you, it took a long time for me to actually understand that wasn't the highest value I brought to my most important relationships, to be able to identify now what they had done wrong or could do better. Probably the one that was as big for me was Tyler Nelson was a mentor of mine. She was the first woman as an organizational behaviorist in the U.S. Army. She's had a doctorate in psychology. She went into the U.S. Army as an organizational behaviorist. She was an amazing woman. And one day I took her home, incredible day of work. And she said, "Hey, Bill, can I give you a little feedback?" And I said, dishonestly, yeah, I love it. Love some feedback, you know. And I'm like, seriously, are you kidding me? At the end of this day, now I need some feedback. I don't think so. She got out of the car, went around the other side, and I unwound the window. And she said, "Oh, Bill, working with you is like a slap and a rose. I'd prefer a lot more of the rose and a lot less of the slap. Have a good night." Didn't take a lot, but that was 40 years ago, 38 years ago. Remember it like it was yesterday afternoon. I don't want to be the slap. I don't want to be the slap. Although I sure thought it was a great thing in the early days.
You know, Bill, you have a really unique profile because you have both self and other feedback from others, high relating, and you have this other side that also gets people see, and the slap in the rose that you're talking about. And on the receiving end of the rose, my personal experience with you is that you are one of the most loving, big-hearted, generous human beings I know. So I get the rose, and people, that's right. And I get the slap, you know, which you've talked about. But boy, it's rare to have. But part of that's probably the work you've done to kind of work with that. But it's rare to have strong scores on critical and arrogance and controlling in that arena of the profile, and high scores on relating. So you're very unique that way. Now the gift of, like, we'll often see coaches profile, for example. We call this a yellow flag, that when scores in the bottom half get too low, it's a watch out for a pretty seriously deeply embedded what we call shadow element. And we'll see this in coaches where you got higher relating, very high relating, lower, a little bit more extended on complying, not much controlling, lower on courage, lower on defining results. So you see this pattern that's more relational than power achieving. No critical. Zero score critical, or very low. And that's a watch out. It's a watch out because it suggests that that power, that gift, is disowned. I can't challenge. I can't cut you. Like in martial art, we use Aikido in our Unity Academy, and the beauty of Aikido is it's not a striking art. It's a moving with the opponent, blending with the opponent, and loving protection of your opponent or enemy. Yes, you disarm them, but you do that in a way that protects them from themselves. That's the state of the art. But sometimes you have to make the cut. You have to really step in and make the cut. And how can you do that in a way that also is loving protection of your enemy? Well, leaders have no problem making the cut, most of them, when you work with them with Aikido. Coaches have a very hard time making the cut. So this ability to say difficult things, even directly, in a way that is risky, it gets lost because they're too organized around being nice. And so the gift
Talked about it as there's a tendency to pull your feedback. And then you never get to the what is real here, what is true here. And that's doing a disservice to the other. That's actually protecting self as opposed to working and aiding or helping the other. And Bob's right, it throws off the shadow.
Yeah. When it really gets powerful, you can say some really direct, seemingly harsh things with an open heart, and people just go, "Oh,
In love.
thank you for speaking the truth." That happened to me when I was working with Peter Block in the very early days. He invited me to come in and do a public seminar with him. Well, I was just getting started. I had no business doing a public seminar with Peter Block. I walked up to the front of the room, middle of the morning, to do my piece, and the whole room groaned. Like, who's this guy? We came for Peter. And that didn't set me up to, my perfectionism kicked in big time, and I was terrible. I was awful. I couldn't even, work the flip charts. So I get him in an exercise. It was brilliant, actually. Peter was taking notes, and a lot of it ended up in his book. So that brilliance that I have was coming through, but it was awful in its delivery. And I come back to the back of the room, and I'm looking at Peter like this, and he goes, and I go, and then the second thing out of his mouth was, "What happened to you up there? I know you're better than that." So it was, and I just melted. I'm like, I know it sucked. Well, but I could feel that he was also holding me, but also really willing to be clear that sucked.
And there's a difference there. Because if I'm giving that kind of critical, that kind of direct feedback, and I've got it on the reactive structure, it doesn't come in the way that it does when I'm giving that kind of critical or direct feedback. There's still a being of a critic on their creative structure, because that's me being interested in your best interest, caring about you. I actually am giving you the gift of clarity that you may not ever get from anyone else or very few people. And that is a beautiful gift. And that means that I have to care enough, love deep enough to be able to overcome myself, to be able to provide that for the other, but it's given in love and it's provided in love. That is a whole different deal. It's a difference between being courageously authentic, takes courage, and authenticity within integrity in a way that it's a gift that is given with love. So it's a whole different world. Changed everything in my relationships. Changed everything.
The other thing that I was just tapping into as you were saying that, Bill, is it's also done from center. Like in the martial art, you move from hara, you move from center. And when you're really centered and present and in heart, you can move from there in ways that can be very harshly experienced, or harsh words, but not harshly experienced. And that's very, very powerful. So
Yeah, very true.
This is the center line of the profile, is this ability to say difficult things and do that with presence and grace. And then it can be transformative.
Presence, grace, love, integrity. All of those coming in combination in a way that those difficult things to say or do, which are part of our lives as leaders, part of our lives as parents, part of our lives as family, aren't received in a way that's detrimental to the individual. They're received in a way that is actually the gift. Gift of clarity is unbelievable. Brene Brown talks about it in a way that I always just so appreciate. Clarity is one of the best things in the world that we can help provide for someone. But it can't be done hung on that reactive structure because it's never received in a way that can be that. It's detrimental. It doesn't mean that you can't grow from it. Just the cost is so high. And I'm protected in it. By the way, when we're in that relationship, I don't want to protect myself from the relationship with you. I want to be undefended in that relationship when I'm high critical on the reactive. I'm defended in the relationship the minute I enter in. And so for me to be undefended, open-hearted with you changes the game. Changes the game. But if I come in defended, then you get ready for the blow. It's not going to be a clean cut.
And as our client said, leaders bring the weather. And when you walk in, everybody's trying to read the weather report.
Yeah. What's he bringing? What's she bringing today?
You come in defended, everybody gets it. And the conversation then has to constrict. It can't open. The one thing that was there for me that we didn't get to is the relationship to perfectionism,
Me too.
Which was interesting that you put these two together. With the perfectionist, that critic is turned inward. And when perfectionism gets really strong, you'll often see high critical scores because I'm not okay if it's imperfect. So I am harshly critical. I'm driving from a very critical place in order to get that kind of perfection out of you. And then it's self-defeating because you can't play at your best when I'm coming at you like this. And that was "you're not the same asshole you used to be" comment that I got, was the teaming up of those two. So what gets turned internal, the harshness inside, often ends up as the harshness outside.